A tropical depression has just formed, and the Gulf Coast is going to want to prepare. What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have Tropical Storm Boris in the Eastern Pacific, and we also have Tropical Depression 3E that has just formed at the time of recording this video. However, Tropical Depression 3E is the one that is really piquing my interest because of the potential carryover effect it's going to have for the Gulf region and into the Atlantic Ocean. So we're going to be talking a lot about both of these today, mainly honing in on Tropical Depression 3 as it carries over into the Gulf and potentially brings impacts to Texas, Louisiana, and a few other areas as well. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right here. Starting off, we have our NHC advisor, well, not our advisories, but we have Boris and we have Tropical Depression 3E over here for you guys right here. We're briefly going to go over Boris, and then we're going to move on to 3E. Here's the public advisory at this current point. Where its current location is 16 degrees north, 99.2 degrees west. It is maximum sustained winds are at 40 miles per hour, minimum central pressure 1,002 millibars, and its present movement is north at 3 miles per hour. As Boris continues to move very slow off the coast of Guerrero, Mexico. Flooding rains are the primary threat with this as well, and that's what we're dealing with tropical storm force winds extending outward only 35 miles from the center. So Boris is a small tropical storm, not surprising because of the intensity right here, but it's definitely something we're going to want to watch out for. Rainfall up to 12 inches possible across portions of the Mexican states of Guerrero and Oaxaca through Tuesday. This rainfall may produce life-threatening flooding and mudslides, especially in areas of steep terrain. So that's what we're dealing with Boris. It's not expected to be a very long-lived tropical storm. Looking at the cone, it's expected to be making landfall in the next few hours and then dissipating by tomorrow morning. So that's Boris for you guys right here. But we have our other area of interest that turned into Tropical Depression 3E right here that we're definitely going to need to walk through and talk about. Starting off with the cone, first off, here's what we got. Tropical storm warnings are in effect from Nicaragua all the way to the Guatemala-El Salvador border. The entire Honduran coast is under a tropical storm warning as well. So this is definitely a situation we're going to want to watch and pay attention to. This is between Boris and Tropical Depression 3E. This is going to be the stronger one of the two right here, with at least the initial intensity set at 60 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center. Although given the conditions it's in right now, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if it were even stronger than that. So we're going to want to pay attention to that as well. But here's what we got according to the public advisory. Here's the current situation. Tropical depression forms off the coast of Nicaragua. Expect to be a tropical storm in a day or two. Maximum sustained winds are 35 miles per hour. Current location 11.5 degrees north, 87.5 degrees west. Moving north at 7 miles per hour. Minimum central pressure is 1,006 millibars. That's what we got for moving through right here. We're definitely going to want to pay attention to it. Rainfall, once again, is the main threat as this tropical depression is hugging the coast of Central America. So definitely going to want to watch out if you're in western Nicaragua, southern Honduras, and the entire country of El Salvador before the system ultimately makes landfall in Guatemala before moving into Mexico. And this path right here is definitely something you're going to want to pay attention to, primarily because as time continues to go on, this is anticipated, according to hurricane models, to move into the Bay of Campeche and into the Gulf region as well. And when that happens, there's a potential for that carryover effect I was talking about with you guys, for maybe some development on the other side into the Atlantic side of Central America. So we're going to want to watch out for it and definitely going to want to pay attention to it moving forward. Quick look at the discussion. Maximum sustained winds are at 60 miles per hour in the next 48 hours. Right here, it's expected to intensify by 60 hours out to 60 miles per hour, and then it's expected to weaken due to land interaction, and then it'll be a post-tropical cyclone before emerging over into to the Bay of Campeche. So definitely something that we're going to want to watch out for and pay very close attention to in the long term. It's what we got for you guys right here according to the National Hurricane Center. Let's go ahead and move on to the track and intensity models for the not for the NHC, but for 3E for you guys. So here's what we got for you guys. This is Tropical Depression 3E. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we got in terms of our track and intensity models. It's so good seeing these back once again. Look at this. Every single hurricane model, except for the H-Wharf, is wanting the system to enter into the Bay of Campeche over here. Its intensity is going to be quite uncertain, and we will be talking about that possibility for the rest of the video. But ultimately, you have the system moving into the Gulf, expected to potentially get its act together, and then eventually make landfall in northeastern Mexico, potentially bring impacts to Texas as well. So we're going to want to watch out for that as well. So that's your track models for you guys right here. Intensity models are a bit different. Let's go ahead and pull these up. Intensity models keep this at tropical storm strength. Some of them actually have it re-strengthening up to tropical storm strength. Some have it at depression strength. The intensity at this current point, because it's so far out and because we have a lot of factors that we need to talk about, is more so uncertain, but it's definitely something that we're going to want to pay attention to, and definitely something that we're going to want to keep an eye out for, especially because as the system starts to move through Central America, I wouldn't necessarily be too surprised, at least based on the models I am seeing and based on the conditions. I wouldn't necessarily be too surprised if the NHC tags the Bay of Campeche and the Southern Gulf region as a little area of interest. I was talking with some guys about it last night, and that's what we're thinking might be happening as the system gets closer to Central America. So that's what we got for you guys right here, possible carryover effect, like I've said before, and it's definitely something that we're going to want to pay attention to. Now, looking at some of the ensemble runs, here's the European ensemble forecast for you guys right here. Definitely a bit of an interesting situation popping up right here that we got for you guys right here. So here's what we got for the European. You have this situation starting to unfold over here, where you have this system where you have currently 3E right now moving towards the Gulf of Tehuantepec or making landfall in Guatemala. The European's a bit further to the west than what the hurricane models and the NHC is advocating for. So we'll have to see how that ultimately pivots. But you do start seeing, at least 5 days out, so this will be Saturday, you start seeing more of these ensembles starting to pick up over here in the Gulf region and even a little bit in the Caribbean as well. So definitely something to watch out for. Then as we go to the next day, so this is Sunday, look at that spread right here. Definitely a pretty interesting spread for sure. You definitely are noticing a little bit of power with a couple of these ensembles, 990 millibars, 977 as well. But my guess is it's likely going to be a rather broad system, which is why, even though you have such a low pressure, it's not necessarily going to be like this super strong hurricane that normally is affiliated with that pressure. It's just going to be a rather broad system, at least initially, unless the system rapidly gets its act together over here. And then as we get to 2 days later, you definitely are seeing a bit of a drop off, but 958 millibars, 979. The ensembles that are left, curiously, have a lot of power associated with it. So I find that kind of interesting. And even some of these European ensembles want this system to kind of head towards Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida as well, which I do find kind of curious. And it's a bit of a shift compared to what we've seen previously. But we'll have to pay attention to it, and we'll have to keep you updated on it as well. But those are the latest European ensembles. Definitely kind of on board with what's going on, at least with what the NHC models are, and the hurricane models are forecasting for as well. Now we'll go ahead and talk about the operational runs, and then we'll talk about the conditions possible. So this is our European. I'm going to get everything set up for you guys right here. Here is our 0Z operational right here. Let's go ahead and take it back a little bit so we can go ahead and talk about this. So let's go ahead first and zoom into the Western Atlantic Basin, so that way it'll be a much better viewing experience for you guys as well. Here is what we got. Okay, it's not loading, which is okay. That's not loading. Come on, European, you got this. Let's go ahead and put this right here. Perfect. So here's what we got for you guys. As the system starts to slowly get its act together, you have Boris over here making landfall in parts of Guerrero and Oaxaca as well. You have this system, Tropical Depression 3E, starting to organize and slowly get its act together, down to 999 millibars in the next 33 hours, according to the European. This is definitely a bit of a contender for some possible strengthening for sure. But you have the system starting to get its act together right here. And as this system continues to get its act together off the coast of El Salvador and Guatemala, it eventually will begin to make landfall near the El Salvador-Guatemala border right here before moving into Central America. And then look at this. It starts emerging off the Bay of Campeche over here in the Gulf region right here. It is relatively large, but it is also relatively broad as well, so it's not necessarily going to be the strongest right here. And the European definitely is a bit excuse me. The European is definitely trying to let it get its act together right here. 1,007 millibar low as it heads towards Mexico right here, as it heads towards northeastern Mexico before making landfall and bringing those impacts as well. So definitely something that we're going to be watching for the next week or so right here. We're going to want to pay attention to it. We're going to want to take this kind of seriously. Just for my own curiosity, I want to see how the wind shear and the dry air aspect of this goes, because I've looked at the water temperatures and I've definitely looked at the ocean heat content, and that's definitely there. We're looking at potentially up to 29 degrees Celsius or 84-degree water temperatures for parts of these regions. But what's that wind shear going to look like? And as you can see right here, taking a quick gander at the wind shear, there is a pocket of shear that does open up for parts of the Bay of Campeche and the Western Gulf region altogether right here. It's not necessarily the largest right here, but it's also, actually it does increase to the entire western half of the Gulf over here as this starts to emerge off the Bay of Campeche before the shear starts to ramp back up and potentially bring at least chip away at a possible structure starting to emerge over here, according to the European. You have that burst of shear that starts to chip away at it. It definitely remains quite a bit stubborn, as a matter of fact, before the system starts to head towards northeastern Mexico and Texas, and that shear just kind of starts to pull it. And as you start noticing this trough over here starting to move through and starting to increase the shear substantially for parts of the Gulf, right as it is making landfall and slamming shut that whole situation over there. So definitely something that we're going to want to watch out for sure. And if this system does want to develop, the first 24 hours or so are going to be very critical for its development, and we're definitely going to want to watch out for it, because after that 24 hours, the shear definitely starts to become a bit more unfavorable, and then it starts to slam shut as it heads towards the northwest eastern Mexican coast and heads towards that region. Definitely something we're going to want to watch out for sure. Just out of curiosity, what's the dry air looking like? Taking a quick gander at the dry air, it looks to me that it's mainly going to be the shear that could be the inhibiting factor that could end up ramping up. You do have some dry air further up to the north over here, but it is like what I like to call mixable dry air. Now, if the shear is going to be running further to the east and kind of ramping up as time continues to progress over here, it's definitely going to cause some problems, and maybe some dry air starts to get closer to it. But at least for the first 24 hours, that moisture pocket holds relatively strong until dry air starts to get further into it over here as it starts to approach the northeastern Mexico over here and ultimately make landfall. But you have that situation that's going to be happening right here. You do have this dry air, and it's like I said before, the first 24 hours are going to be critical for this system to slowly get its act together. If it doesn't get its act together after that, then it most likely will not develop. However, it has that window, it has those conditions, and it has that water temperature to suffice. It's just a situation that's we're going to want to watch as it evolves. And it's definitely something I'm going to definitely be watching out for here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel, because regardless of development, in my opinion, impacts are still very much on the table for parts of northeastern Mexico over here, parts of Texas over here as well, and it's definitely something I'm watching out for and taking kind of seriously, mainly due to the proximity it is to land, and we're going to continue to monitor it as this situation progresses. Now, here is the GFS run. GFS is definitely not as accurate as the European. It definitely has its own issues right here, but it is a good comparison model for sure. And as we go ahead and pull up the 0Z model run right here, there we go. Definitely an interesting situation, at least with Tropical Depression 3E, wanting the system to really considerably strengthen up to potentially a Category 1 hurricane before making landfall near Guatemala, and then moving it through the country, and then moving into Mexico, and then emerging itself off the bay over here. You see that closed low over here according to the GFS right over here as it emerges. It's relatively broad and it's relatively large, but it definitely starts to bring some impacts to a lot of areas, including Veracruz and the surrounding areas in Mexico before making landfall and bringing impacts to these regions over here. So overall, the GFS isn't showing strong development over here, but it's definitely a situation we're going to want to watch as it evolves. So that's what we got for you guys right here. Here is the Canadian run as well. Canadian run has always been kind of interesting as well. Canadian, as it continues to pull up right here, definitely showing that increased organization and strengthening, although the Canadian does want this to move further to the east, mainly making landfall in Honduras and those areas before emerging off of the Bay of Campeche over here, further to the east actually, before moving a bit west. And you do have that circulation starting to tighten up a little bit before it makes landfall. Canadian's not giving the system a lot of time to get its act together, but there is that window. It's that window, I believe, is about 36 to 48 hours or so for the system to get its act together, according to some of these models. So that's what we got for you guys right here. Here is the icon for you right here, and the icon actually does go far enough out for us to kind of talk about and for us to kind of see, okay, what is that even forecasting? Icon is kind of similar to the Canadian run actually, as it has the system moving further to the east, mainly kind of hugging the coast right here before making landfall in Guatemala or El Salvador, before emerging off the Bay of Campeche over here into, as it crosses through Central America. You're looking at 1,009 millibars as this system starts to get its act together before making landfall actually a bit further to the south than what some of these models are forecasting, near the Veracruz region, as a matter of fact. So it's definitely something that we're paying attention to. And once again, it has that window where it could potentially develop. But if it does develop, it doesn't look like it's going to be a relatively a strong system, maybe a weak tropical storm at most, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing. But you're still going to want to prepare for those impacts, because this could bring potentially some very heavy rain, a lot of gusty winds, and a lot of areas, especially in this region of Mexico and southern Texas, don't typically see this kind of these kind of impacts for sure. They don't typically see these kind of developments, and they're definitely going to want to take this kind of seriously, not just because of the potential flash flooding that this will bring, but also could bring a few damaging wind gusts with it as well. So those are the main impacts that I'm watching out for. Storm surge is going to be negligible for a system like this, both in the Eastern Pacific and in the Bay of Campeche/Gulf region as well. But by and large, you're definitely seeing those signals definitely picking up, both with the hurricane models, and even some of the operational runs are going off of it as well. And it's definitely something we're going to want to watch as the days continue and as the days start to strengthen, the tropical depression starts to strengthen. One thing I will say, though, is the stronger that this tropical depression gets, let's say this does become a hurricane, or even a little bit stronger than that, the stronger the system gets, the more carryover it's going to have in the Atlantic side. And what I mean by that is, the stronger this gets, there's a chance that it emerges as a more organized low-pressure system compared to a tropical storm. And that's something that I'm watching out for. And if it does start to rapidly intensify because of the insanely warm waters it's currently sitting over, I will definitely watch out for it, and I will definitely keep you updated as more information comes out. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you'd like to help us out, ask us questions, or just hang out with us, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that is in the end screen, and we'd like to see some new members come around. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.